Carlos Olivera. Now, I'm not gay. However, there are some times where I start to feel like Big Boss during the 1970s.
Dr. Bard, are you in there? I'm here to rescue you. Open the door.
No voice match found.
Voice match? What kind of sci-fi bullshit is this? Open sesame.
No voice match found.
This is Nathaniel Bard. Open the door, please.
No voice match found.
So, I saw a poll a couple weeks back talking about which Resident Evil side character you would want to see come back in their own game. And for me, it's a no-brainer. It's Carlos. The whole thing with the guilt-ridden umbrella mercenary that's on the run from his own country, that has this mysterious past. Clearly, some sketchy crap has gone down with him, but he's trying to do the right thing. He helps out our main character, and he's just generally cool. Specifically, the 2020 depiction of Carlos Olivera is probably one of my favorite characters in recent years in regards to video games. Like, you could literally stick Carlos in any game, and I mean any game, as a supporting or main character, or even as an Easter egg character, and I would be happy. I just like seeing him talk to other characters and do shit. So today we're going to be talking about a potential Carlos Olivera driven game and how exactly that would break down. So before we start talking about gameplay or mechanics, let's start breaking down the basic story synopsis I have for how this would work. So our story would take place about a year after the Raccoon City incident, somewhere towards the later end of 1999. Now, Carlos and Jill will have been hiding out, let's say in Costa Rica, somewhere that's like deep jungle bush, not very developed, supposedly off of Umbrella's radar, since Jill starts RE3 terrified of being hunted down by Umbrella, and now Carlos shares that same exact fear. So they spend about a year down there together, just lying low. But as we know, Jill in the early Y2K years will meet up with Chris Redfield, and they will start up the BSAA together. And Carlos, while he hears about Jill reaching out to Chris and starting to set that up and, taking the fight back to Umbrella, Carlos wants to stay where he is because he's honestly done with this shit. He's done of wandering around and fighting for different causes only to see that they're corrupt from the inside and then having to run away from them. So Carlos wants to move on with his life. So the game can start with Carlos saying bye to Jill. Jill can be all like, "Are you sure you don't want to come with me?" Carlos could be like, "Yes, absolutely." Carlos goes back, and while Jill is boarding her plane, she notices some sketchy individuals coming out of it. But for the moment, she doesn't really do anything. Now, once Carlos goes back home, all of a sudden, the town that they were living in for the past year has a BOW outbreak. It's very similar to the T-virus, like you'll get some basic T-virus zombies, but Carlos will also be stalked by some kind of weird lizard tyrant hybrid that can turn invisible, use projectile weapons, moves really fast, and can kill you really easily up close. Throughout the game, Carlos will also come across large BOW like lizard amphibian type enemies that he has to take down and basically run away from this predator that's chasing him through the jungle. He will have to use the jungle to survive, but also have to contend not only with the T-virus and this new strain of like lizard enemies, but also the environment, mucking up his supplies, his weapons, slowing him down when the predator is chasing him. It's definitely going to be a game where you need to be aware of the jungle and use it as a weapon, or it will be used as a weapon against you. Eventually, towards the climax, Carlos will be captured or incapacitated, and you'll have a short section where you play as Jill, coming back to rescue Carlos in a very similar way that he rescues her in RE3. Just a full circle kind of thing. Then together, they figure out that Umbrella operatives have tracked them down there, and they were setting this area up as a testing ground, because you know Umbrella, they're not just going to come out and kill you, they're going to be like, okay, let's get some data for some new BOWs. So they set up a staging camp for a outbreak, and the guys coming off the plane that Jill saw earlier, that was the main reason why she ends up coming back to double check, because she just can't shake the feeling that something is wrong, are the same guys that are setting up these research posts in the jungle surrounding the village that they're staying in. And by the end of the game, they need to go into the laboratory, take down this predator thing together, and blow up the Umbrella facility, barely escaping with their lives, at which point Carlos is definitely done with this shit. He's probably gonna tag along with Jill to go to the BSAA, but probably in a more supporting role, because again, he's just tired of all of this stuff that he's been doing for all of his life as a soldier. He wants to get away from that. And Jill, of course, will go and start the BSAA up with Chris, and that'll be the ending of this game. Alright, so the sandbox is going to be pretty straightforward Resident Evil, however I am going to put emphasis on the idea of trap type weapons, since throughout this game you're going to be pursued by an invisible enemy that's really powerful. You'd be better off setting up traps for it and waiting for it to fall into them to give you an opportunity to do damage to this predator. So the weapons I'm thinking of giving you are a flamethrower that will destroy shrubbery. It'll be like an area denial thing for the predator, so if you light up an entire area behind you on fire, you know that the predator can't sneak up on you. And if you light it on fire, you'll be able to track this invisible enemy. Now, I'm thinking of turning the RE4 bear traps into your own favor. Carlos might be able to find these while he's going through the jungle, in different shacks and stuff like that. Place down these bear traps on pathways you think the predator is going to follow, and then once it's trapped, hit it with whatever guns you have. Now, pit spikes, I'm imagining working in the same way that the window boards work in RE4 and in RE2, where basically if you see a pit on the ground that you have to jump over, you'll have the option to fill it up with spikes. So the next time you're moving through that area, if the predator is chasing you, there is a chance that they will fall in there, get stuck for a little bit, not only allowing you to do some damage to keep it stunned, but also as a way to get away from it quicker. I'm thinking for a grenade type, shock grenades would be really cool. Just kind of like an area of effect stun weapon, so if the predator's chasing you and you know it's behind you, but you can't really see where it is, you can throw this weapon and the electricity will reveal it and keep it stunned for a little bit. So again, you choose whether or not you want to run or do a little extra damage. Now, the basic pistol will be your M9 starter handgun. At first, it's going to be pretty useless against anything that's seriously a threat, but against the lower tier T-virus type enemies, it'll be useful to get them out of your way. However, you can upgrade this to become an M9 Rafika, so the upgraded fire rate gives you a better chance of actually hitting the predator or bigger enemies when they're coming at you. Now, for the shotgun, I'm going to feature an Ithaca that will start as a long barrel version. Now, the upgrades for this will be sawing off the barrel and sawing down the stock and getting a slam fire upgrade. Like the M9, the idea with this is to be able to hit a wider area, so you get that spread, and with the slam fire, you get a higher fire rate. Because again, the enemies in this game, aside from the lower tier ones, are going to be moving fast, so a high fire rate is the end upgrade goal. Then of course you're going to have a basic M79, some explosive ammo for boss fights, you'll have freeze ammo to use on some of the faster enemies or maybe even the predator to trap it in place for a while, and chalk ammo. Now, chalk ammo will function in a very similar way to a smoke grenade. However, if the invisible predator walks through it, they will be covered in a bright orange chalk for a short period of time, allowing you to fight this thing. Then towards the end of the game, you'll be able to get your hands on an F2000. This will be like an early Umbrella prototype of the weapon. Basically, you can get a thermal optic and a compensator for this thing, so in New Game Plus or towards the end of the game, you can just laser beam the predator from a distance where you're safe. So it's like that end game kind of weapon. Now, of course, with all of these weapons, if you're walking through mud or quicksand, or you have like some other kind of environmental gunk that gets up in it, it'll end up being jammed up. In order to unjam a weapon, you will need to find gun oil. Gun oil will act as the same way as a herb or ammunition. It's a usable resource to maintain your weapon. So you want to find this stuff and you want to save it, but at the same time, you don't know how much you want to carry with you, because carrying some of this stuff will also take up precious slots for weapons, ammo, and key items. Now, the basic rundown for the enemies are the T-Virus jobbers. These are like your lower tier zombies. They're just there to tempt you to waste your ammunition. You'll come across larger Tyrannosaurus type enemies that will like charge at you, and you'll have to like dodge roll out of the way. And then the same way in RE3, you dodge roll and then you could shoot the critical. Carlos will be able to dodge out of the way and fire at these things from behind after they run past him. You'll have pterodactyls. Now these guys here, you'll have to use the shrubbery to hide from them, so you'll have like an RE4 style crouching system, so you'll lose them, and then while they're looking for you, they'll perch on a tree, which gives you the opportunity to shoot them. But when they're flying around from above, you really just need to focus on hiding. Then of course you'll have like some kind of mini boss fight with a T-Rex, and for this it's pretty much just a matter of, I hope you saved your explosive ammo. Now that we've talked about all the weapons, how they work, the jamming, some of the environment, you know, having like quicksand and traps and stuff that can mess up your weapons, and being able to hide in the shrubs or, you know, burn them so the predator can't hide in them, let's talk about the predator itself.
Because I'm a stud. I'm ballsy. I don't take no shit from anyone. I smoke my stogie anywhere I want. I don't have to find a hideout place like you.
Now, the predator will just basically be like a giant kind of Verdugo type of enemy that has the long tail, that moves really fast, that can really claw you up at close range. But I also want to give it a Nemesis style rocket launcher that it can like shoot at you, but you'll have like a laser guidance system so you can like dodge and get out of the way and you get a little bit of a warning. But you'll also have it where the predator understands that if it gets shot, it will be hurt. So what it will do is the same thing you're supposed to be doing. The predator will see the environment, and if it notices quicksand, if it notices a narrow pathway that you have to go along, that's when it's going to choose to ambush you. When you're in the quicksand, when you're on the narrow pathway and don't have a lot of spaces to move. So you as the player should set up your traps accordingly and understand how this predator thinks. If I'm about to go down a narrow pathway, maybe I set up a couple bear traps behind me and I keep a shock grenade handy, so when this thing that comes out, if it comes from behind me, it gets stuck, and if it comes from in front of me, I can just shock it and move past it. But if you don't think like this, the predator will punish you. Now, of course, it's going to be indestructible until you reach the end of the game and get some kind of major boss-killing MacGuffin that you and Jill will use to kill this thing. And yeah, its boss fight will function very similarly, I imagine, to somewhere between Verdugo and the second last Nemesis boss fight of Resident Evil 3. So there it is. There's my idea on how to do a Carlos Olivera driven game that still fits into the base narrative of the Resident Evil franchise, adding in those environmental elements and gun maintenance and an emphasis on traps to make it feel different, but still having, you know, scarcity in items, a limited inventory, a dodge system rather than a parry system, and stealth mechanics to hide from the enemies to always make you feel like you are surviving, you are on the back foot. I want to capture the same kind of vibe as Resident Evil 3 2020, or even the original, where even though there are some action elements to this, I still want it to lean more to survival horror than I do wanting it to become like a Resident Evil 4 type straight up action game. Now, this is the part where if there's anyone from Capcom that happens to be listening to a dipshit like me, this game, or this theoretical game idea, would also function really well if you guys ever want to reboot Dino Crisis. Now, I don't know if any of you guys out there know Dino Crisis. Dino Crisis was made in 1999 and was a way for the Capcom developers to make a game that focuses on survival horror but still tries to spice up the genre, so it's not just another Resident Evil zombie game. In this game, you play as Regina, who's like this special operative infiltrating this facility to find the scientist, but it's overrun with mutant dinosaurs. Now, unlike the zombies, you'll be fighting a lot of raptors, and most of the time it'll just be one or two of them, because that's all there needs to be to use up your resources and wear you down. So instead of fighting them head on, you're supposed to run away from them and set up these laser traps so they can't get to you, and you get an opportunity to hit them where they can't hit you. Now, the issue with the original Dino Crisis is that it's a very hard puzzle game, so it's not very approachable to people like me, or even people that grew up with the PS1 generation, who, were expecting Resident Evil type of puzzles. There's a lot of like weird niche passcode things, and if you don't play this game like all in one sitting and you come back to it after a week, there's a very good chance that you've forgotten some pretty crucial information. Now, the sequel definitely goes like really actiony and even features some mechanics like a merchant system that kind of foreshadows Resident Evil 4, but that's a topic for another video. The point is that Dino Crisis existed, it had a really good concept, and there's a lot of fans of Dino Crisis that would love to see it remade or rebooted. So this whole idea with Carlos in the jungle fighting a predator and having to deal with different like lizard type enemies could very easily just be a bunch of dinosaur style enemies. I mean, I mentioned Tyrannosaurus, Pterodactyl, and a T-Rex towards the beginning, or when we were talking about the sandbox, because, this could literally just work as a Dino Crisis game. Your predator could just be a super kind of raptor with a rocket launcher that turns invisible and functions the same way. And those little jobber type enemies could be the occasional normal raptor, there to, add danger, cause you to waste your ammunition, or something like that. So everything I talked about with this Carlos game could also be translated in bringing Dino Crisis back to life. So again, if there's anyone there from Capcom that happens to see this video, give us a little bit more Carlos. And if you happen to get around to it, it doesn't even need to be a big project, but just do something true to form with Dino Crisis. Anyways, this has been Pliskin, over and out.
This is Solid Snake. Hey, subscribe to Pliskin Boy. God damn it.
You heard him.